Rand Paul says it's a sellout. Chip Roy is pointing fingers and taking names, and don't let them know the dirty secret of the debt deal. This is Steve Elliott with Brian Connor with a special live report for Grassfire team members, for conservative citizens across the country, because we're getting the shakedown is happening right now, Brian.
I'm telling you what, Steve, this is, all hands on deck, 4-alarm fire. It's, the future of the country versus the uniparty. It's good versus evil, whatever you want to call it. This is it.
It is.
Because really I guess the sides are, stars are aligning to make this look really bad, and they're trying to portray it as really good. And, it's a time at best, I think, after you and I have discussed it a lot today and yesterday, if it's a step in the right direction, it's like a tiny little step. And so it's just
very tiny.
It's not, I don't think it's the win that the Republicans think it is. And I definitely don't think it's the defeat that the Democrats are, playing it off as it is.
Right. Now, before we unveil the dirty little secret of the dirty big debt deal, first, let's just talk about some of the specifics of it. First of all, they did this again, as we predicted, over a holiday weekend, behind closed doors. Team McCarthy and Team Biden get together and they work out a deal. And then they announce on Saturday, they have a wonderful deal that's great for everybody. And even some of the conservative media, like Breitbart, jumped on board quickly. I don't want to get too much. Breitbart does great work, but in this case, they just dove in. They had big advertisers supporting it. Big push. This is all happy. This is all great.
Yeah.
But in reality, what we're learning is it's not so great, Brian. Not so great in a lot of counts. First of all, the dirty deal doesn't cut spending. This GOP uni-party deal with the swamp, at best, cut spending by 0.1 or 0.2% of GDP.
At best.
But at best. Now, here's the dirty trick of it all. They used baseline budgeting. So the budget increased 10% last year. Discretionary spending increased 10%. This is on top of the incredibly massive 40% increase since COVID started. 40%. Right. Government's grown 40% since 2020. So they used baseline budgeting, which means all federal spending is given first an inflation increase. That's where they start talking about the next year's budget.
Right.
And then when they cut a little bit off the top of that, they say they magically were cutting spending, but it's all part of really what is a government scam. And they're not cutting spending.
No.
They're not holding the line. They're not going back. So we have had a 40% increase in government spending since the start of 2020,
right,
which is remarkable. So what the original Republican proposal was, or bill that was passed, was to reset a lot of that big increase in spending. And the other big thing that they didn't do is supposedly roll back the IRS, the funding for the IRS, basically the weaponization of the IRS. And then they even were bragging about that, Brian, but we're finding out they've only rolled back about 2% of that funding.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Again, you got
of the IRS funding is going to continue.
At most, at 0.2% spending reduction, and then a 2% reduction in the IRS weaponization. Them trying to hire, more than 80,000 agents to conduct more audits of middle and lower income Americans. So, we have an acronym for those of you who might be new to Grassfire, those of you who are, good friends, VIP members. Mm-hmm. It's Ido Bragnikvi. The acronym is I'm tired of being right and getting no credit for it. Over the past week, we've said many, many times, this is a dirty deal that could happen over the weekend. And then when Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said, no, we're not going to run out of money on June 1st. It's going to be June 5th. I think everyone took a collective sigh of relief. We went into the 3-day weekend like we always do, thinking, okay, well, cooler heads will prevail and nobody's going to be in a rush to do this dirty backroom deal in the middle of the night when nobody's in town. And guess what? Ido Bragnikvi.
They did it.
We were right. And
exactly anyone we predicted, Brian. I mean, we out there, we called it. The dirty deal is going to happen at night. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. We didn't want it to happen, of course. We wanted this to go through closer to what the Republicans had originally passed. But sadly, it's happening, Brian. It's happening.
Yeah.
Now, I want to hear from Chip Roy. Let's play a little clip from Chip Roy today as the Freedom.
Clear. Not one Republican should vote for this deal. It is a bad deal. No one sent us here to borrow an additional $4 trillion to get absolutely nothing in return. But at best, if I'm being really generous, a spending freeze for a couple of years. That's it. That's about what you get. And frankly, you're going to make things worse. And my Democratic colleagues know it. That's why they're supporting it. That's why they're going around gleeful. Like, there's a reason our Democrat colleagues support this. There's a reason that Mitt Romney supports this. There's a reason that Bill Kristol supports this. It's all the same stuff. There's a reason that our conservative allies are opposing it roundly. The Club for Growth scoring against it. The Heritage Foundation scoring against it. Freedom Works scoring against it. Ron DeSantis publicly opposed. President Trump said he thought we should.
Yeah, it's pretty strong words from Chip Roy as the Freedom Caucus hit their presser today about midday. And
I need to add something quickly, Steve.
Go ahead, Brian.
Grassfire against it.
Grassfire against it. Yeah.
He mentioned all those other ones. That's how he throw us in there.
Throw us in there. Now, we're doing this live stream right now because something's happening today. There's actually 3 opportunities for citizens across the country to still have a voice in this debate.
That's right.
First is today, the Rules Committee, they're scheduled to meet right now. As they're scheduled to meet right now. The Rules Committee has to approve or move the legislation. For the Speaker to move a bill straight to the floor, it has to go through the Rules Committee. If it's not going through committees, it's not going through committee. This is
well, and so the people understand that's why that the Rules Committee is so lopsided. There are 9 Republicans and 4 Democrats. So you almost always, the Speaker almost always gets what they want. But today there's an opportunity that there's Representative Massey, Norman, and Roy, who you just saw. If they oppose it, then it won't exit the Rules Committee. Unless
part of the negotiations in order to make McCarthy Speaker, they wanted seats on the Rules Committee for just this purpose.
Right.
Now, traditionally, the minority party on the Rules Committee never supports whatever the majority party is promoting because that gives the majority party the opportunity to bring any bill to the floor and pass it just with their majority.
Right.
So traditionally, all the Democrats should oppose this rule. But if the 3 you mentioned oppose this rule to the Rules Committee and the Democrats, it can't get out of the Rules Committee.
7-6.
If it gets through the Rules Committee without these 3 Republicans, that means McCarthy had to have Democrats to push it through the Rules Committee. So this is our first thing. They're meeting right now. So we're asking you to go to grassfire.com. If you could check your email, you might have even gotten a text from us. This is an opportunity for you to take action. And we've isolated several of the key members of the Rules Committee that you can fax right now. We've got phone numbers in your email. You can contact them as quickly as you can. Please let your voice be heard. Let's not sit by silently during this debate. Let's take a stand. Let's let our voices be heard. This Rules Committee vote is very significant. It's not insignificant. Right now, let's get to the big secret. Don't let them know the dirty deal has no limits. Now, you and I had seen this in different articles over the weekend, and you mentioned it to me, and I'm like, wait a minute, it can't be.
Yeah, you didn't at first. You didn't really believe it. You're like, no, that can't be right.
I didn't believe you, Brian. To be honest, with all due respect, I didn't believe you. What do you they kept throwing around a $4 trillion increase, right? That was a number. Was that not the number they've been throwing around this?
Yes.
Is $4 trillion, and they're so lying, manipulative about it. They're making us think that they are increasing the debt limit by $4 trillion. Now, just to review, by statute, Congress sets the amount of money that the U.S. government can borrow. It's about $31 trillion right now. It's a very specific number. So Congress sets that amount by statute. And this is what has caused this big debate, this crisis. The whole world's going to end because we can't break through. We can't borrow any more money than that. So then when they announced this deal, they said it's about a $4 trillion extension of the debt deal. But it's not that at all, Brian. What is it?
No. You heard Representative Chip Roy. He's from Texas, just to add a little context. Firebrand, speaking the truth out there, except that he said $4 trillion. Well, that's an estimate. That's what they're estimating that the government will spend in excess over the next 2 years. Right. There's no limit now. They've just given, it's like giving the government a credit card with no limit. They can just spend, spend, spend. Now, again, we understand the argument that the U.S. needs to meet its credit obligations. Okay, there needs to be, faith in the American economy, in the system, in the government, that we're going to pay our bills. Like anybody wants that. Right. But I mean, to not cut spending and just continue to borrow money to pay those bills. If you live in a household with people and you can't just spend, your credit card's eventually going to run out, and then you're going to get eaten up by the interest rates. This is a losing formula in every living room, in every kitchen in America. Why do they live so differently in Washington, D.C., that they just think they can spend, which is our money? Right. It's enough. It's just no wonder why there's such a reaction to this.
I was thinking, Brian, if suddenly your family or my family were given a credit card with literally no spending limits, that would be great for us. We just go spend.
Yeah, whatever we need.
Whatever we need, we just spend. Now, let's say that we didn't even have to pay it back. Well, eventually, our children or grandchildren would either have to pay it back, or they would not get any inheritance because we would spend all of our inheritance. So they would get nothing from us. If we just had a credit limit with a credit card, no limit, we just would spend. That's exactly what we're doing right now. Now, I want to show, because I know you may be questioning, could they really be pushing a debt limit increase that has no debt limit in it? Brian, let's actually look, and I'm gonna try to. This is actually okay. So this great dastardly debt deal is about 100 pages long. And I'm going to put this on full zoom just so maybe I can get there, just show it real quick. So this is actually page, I think 98 or 99. The last 2 pages, just a couple paragraphs. So the only part of the bill that deals with the actual debt limit, increase in the debt limit, is the last couple paragraphs. And I'm going to show you right here. It says, in general, section 3101B of Title 31 of the United States Code. Now that is the statute that actually sets the debt limit. So it's in our U.S. code, shall not apply for the period beginning on the date of the enactment of this act and ending on January 1st, 2025. So basically it covers two full years that there's no debt limit. They suspend the law of the debt limit. And then it gets just as bad, because then it says effective January 2, the limitation in effect under this section shall be increased to the extent that blah, 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 blah. So basically what it says then, Brian, is that after January 1st, 2025, they will be able to increase the amount as much as they need for necessary obligations of the government. Well, if you're living and working in the government in DC, it's all necessary, Brian. We've learned that from the beginning. So basically it removes the statute, it suspends the statute regarding the debt limit for 2 full years, and then basically creates no parameters that I can see on the outside of it. The government can just spend whatever it wants for at least the next 2 years, and then into 2025, no debt limit, Brian. Yeah, I don't even know what to say about that. Did I lose you?
Well, no, I'm here now. I was kind of just checking to make sure that we were live to the rest of the world, and I almost just crashed my system.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's just, it's just hard to come up with words at this point. We've seen this happen for so long, so many times, and you said something about, that really kind of struck a chord with me, about, your inheritance. And Proverbs 13, verse 22 says that a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. That verse almost always breaks my heart, because it just tells me that I'm not watching out just for my own, wife and kids, not just my own family, but my extended family. I'm trying to leave a legacy. And if you look at this, what kind of inheritance does a deal like this leave to our children's children? Does that make us good men and good women if we don't fight this and say, listen, 30 trillion, 32 trillion, it doesn't matter, we'll figure it out? How? The debt is like $90,000 per taxpayer. It's an incredible amount. Steve, I shared with you earlier that chart from the St. Louis Federal Reserve. I don't know.
We'll show it in a second. We'll just hold on. In fact, I don't know if I can get to it real quick. We could show it right now if we let me show this quote from Rand Paul, then we'll go to that chart. How's that?
Excellent.
Look at Rand Paul. Fake conservatives agree to fake spending cuts. Deal will increase mandatory spending about 5%, increase military spending about 3%, maintain current non-military discretionary spending at post-COVID levels. No real cuts to see here. Conservatives have been sold out once again. That's really where we're at, Brian.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, and you've already said it, Steve. There are three opportunities, to stop this.
Mm-hmm.
There's today in the Rules Committee, then there's a floor vote, and then there's a vote in the Senate. And again, everything they shove it all in. They try and cram 3 pounds of meat into a 2-pound sausage.
Right.
By saying it has to be done by the 5th, or all these things are. Social Security people won't get their checks. And again, most people don't get checks. It's technically it's direct deposit, but whatever the vision, I guess, of a check and coming and people having it in their hands is still enough for them to sell it that way. But they have all these doomsday scenarios that they could have dealt with months ago, but they decided not to because it's what do we always call it, Steve? The tyranny of the urgent.
Well, Brian, they use it. Don't let a crisis ever go. Don't ever waste a crisis. Where that expression is, it's like they want these crises so they can keep growing government. That's the end of the day. They created this crisis and now they're benefiting from it. Let's look at the chart that you were mentioning just a second ago, Brian. And I'm gonna again. This is something I want us to see as closely as we can. If you can take a look at that, what this is showing is this is total federal debt, and the beginning of the line is about $1 trillion. This is the start of Ronald Reagan's term. $1.1 trillion. Okay, that was total federal debt. $1.1 trillion. And you can see this line, it grows objectionably fast, but even by 1998, it's 5 trillion. So yeah, it's increased a lot. But now look what happens. We come to 2008 and we have the financial crisis of 2008. Again, what do? They use a crisis to dramatically increase government. And then they never return to the previous. See this pace. Okay, we don't like it, but see this the level there. But look at it. So then they continue the increase all through the 2000s, even through the Trump presidency. You see it still increasing. And then look what happens in 2020. Look at this. 2020, 23 trillion jumps in 1 year, in 1 quarter, Brian, to 26 trillion. By the end of that year, we're almost at 28 trillion. So we see this incredible escalation of spending, of government debt that's happened. And and this is what the Republican plan that they originally passed, it reset it back to that pre-COVID level and said, let's go back to that. They won't go back, Brian. They never go back. Never.
Right. No, it's Ron DeSantis said it today, and it was in a tweet that I think you shared earlier in our message. Was he said our country is careening toward bankruptcy, and after this debt ceiling quote unquote deal, it will still be careening towards bankruptcy. I mean, we can't. That chart just shows you can't continue that way. You can't increase your debt by 200% from 10 million to 30 million. In just what was it, 10 or 15 years, and it was bad. Things were bad in 2008, 2009, 2010, really bad. People were losing their homes. Real estate prices crashed. And now all of a sudden, because of, the COVID virus and all the money that the government was throwing at people because of the lockdowns and to compensate and to keep people home, it made everything just balloon even more out of control. At 10 trillion, I think we wondered then, we were younger men, but still not young. But we looked at things and we know how money works. And, we have our own family budgets and you look at things, you go, wow, 10 trillion, that's horrible. Oof. Can't get much worse than that, can it?
Yeah. Well, it has.
20, 30 trillion now, hitting 32. And then everybody's just throwing up their hands like, okay, fine, let's go to, an estimated 35 or 36 trillion in the next, basically, year and 7 months.
Exactly. And now we're getting to the point where the debt, the public debt is exceeding the gross domestic product of the country. And there's no end in sight. And this does end in radical inflation and destruction of our wealth. It
Yeah.
really does. It doesn't end good. One more, Scott Perry. Let's listen a little bit from Scott Perry. I think it's worth hearing what he had to say here.
But in the House and the Senate, to hold the line for the bill that we passed. This deal that we've heard about totally fails to deliver on all of it. And if you want to get into the details, let's just start with the IRS. 87,000 new IRS agents, all the billions of dollars, $1.4 billion cut, leaving the balance to be used by the IRS immediately, starting at this moment, continuing at this moment, continuing on for the duration of this presidency. $4 trillion at least, an unlimited debt ceiling increase.
There it is. Unlimited. Spend as much as you want.
As much as you want. Unlimited debt ceiling increase, Brian, what we've been talking about. No
As
real
often as
spending
you want.
cuts. No real spending cuts. The IRS moves on like normal. And no actual, the debt ceiling bill has no debt ceiling in it, Brian. None.
Again, it's, I don't know. It just makes you wonder. I mean, and you have other, like you mentioned, Breitbart earlier, that's behind it, supporting it, and again, they do a lot of great reporting, but that kind of shocked us a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then to see what Newt Gingrich, he released an op-ed on Fox News on their website, touting it and saying that this is a win for Republicans, and maybe
it's a policy wonk win, Brian, and there are good elements to it, procedural elements to it. There's a flattening of the growth curve, yes, but no real cuts. They didn't roll back the IRS. They didn't even the student loan debacle can continue. And now we know this is the most offensive thing. You've been sold that they're increasing the debt ceiling by $4 trillion. American people, you've been lied to.
Mm-hmm.
They have created unlimited debt, no parameters. It could go up 10 trillion in the next 2 years, and there's nothing that they could just keep borrowing and borrowing and borrowing. Nothing at all. So listen, this really comes down to we can shout from the housetops, we can scream and yell. Are you going to take action as a citizen? Are you going to do something about it? Call the switchboard at Capitol Hill. Talk to your member of Congress. If you need action items and resources, go to grassfire.com. We've got our fax platform where you can send faxes directly. Right now, the Rules Committee is meeting. You can send faxes to the Rules Committee, other key members. We've got phone numbers, contact information, so your voice can be amplified in this debate. Again, there's 3 opportunities today, tomorrow during the House vote, if it gets to the Rules Committee, and then probably Friday in the Senate vote. Brian, you were going to say something.
Yeah, and we're talking about trying to empower people, so that they can make their voices heard. And in order to do that, we have slashed the prices on our regular, on these fax fires. Mm-hmm. Discounts of up to 57% off, because we just want you to make your voice heard. Because too often, I think we sit in our homes or at work, or who knows if in our car, if we're listening to the radio, and we just kind of throw our hands up and we're like, what are we going to do? And if you don't want to go down, without a fight, if you don't want to make your voice heard, you don't have to. You can go to grassfire.com and you can send your faxes to these key individuals. I mean, we're talking about members of the Rules Committee, Freedom Caucus members, who right now are the ones holding the line, because you heard what Representative Perry said, who is the head of the Freedom Caucus. He talked about it not doing things that the Limit, Save, Grow Act. They signed a bill that was going to lower the deficit by 4.8 trillion over 10 years, and was going to only extend the debt limit by 1.5 trillion for 1 year. And now all of a sudden we've got this, totally different bill that's being presented.
With no limits, Brian. No limits, which is a get out of jail free card for the Democrats, because Joe Biden and the Democrats don't have to deal with this during an election year. They gave them a free pass through the election.
Let me ask, if you like the way that things are going, Okay. If you're happy when you go to the supermarket and you see the things that you you have bought for years that all of a sudden are, 25%, 33%, 50% more, 100% have doubled in price, then you can just, keep going. Just, let it be. Don't make your voice heard. Just say, hey, shrug your shoulders. That's the way it is. But if you want to make some kind of an impact, if you at least want to kind of have like they say, have a dog in this fight, we want to empower you to do that. It's $20 to send. I think right now it's 47 faxes.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's a huge discount. And you can go to House and Senate, primarily House right now. We have level 1, level 2, and level 3 faxes that will go to House and Senate offices. The first level will reach, like I said, key members of the Rules Committee, Freedom Caucus members, and also Speaker McCarthy and Majority Leader Steve Scalise from Louisiana. All of those people, are influencers up on Capitol Hill. And if they hear from enough Americans, maybe it'll make them take action and rethink this thing, before it becomes the law of the land.
Well, I hope this has been eye-opening for our listeners and viewers. It's been an eye-opening day for us at just no limits, no real cuts, no cuts in the IRS, basically, and no actual limit to the debt ceiling, no limit to the amount of debt and borrowing that the government can do. So listen, if you haven't sent your faxes or made your phone calls, please do that. Also, if you're not a VIP, we really need your help. Our VIPs make these broadcasts possible. They make it possible for us to do what we do. And then we also thank you by letting you send these faxes and other things at great discounts. So please become
a VIP. We said $20 for for level 1, but if you're a VIP member for $15 a month, it's $4.
Right.
So you can send 47 faxes for $4.
And you can send it 5 times today. For real. You can do as much as you want as a VIP at that and at the discount and let your voice be heard. You can customize we have sample, but you can customize what you want to say. And then we also, once you send your faxes, we have a special impact portal, which allows you to take your impact to another level. That's just for those who are VIPs and those who are sending faxes. So, well, thank you, Brian, for doing this special report. And thank you to our team members. We just encourage you to take action. This is Steve Elliott for Brian Connor for Grassfire.